Welcome to Sliver and Bite TV. Today we're making spaghetti bolognese, but with a little twist. Let's get started. We'll start by preparing our vegetables. First off, we're going to dice up our brown onion. I like to do my brown onion in quite a fine dice, but just like everyone's taste, it's all different, so dice it up to your liking. I've placed my pot on a medium heat just to start warming it, ready to put the onion in. You could put the onion in as you chop it, however, it cooks unevenly, so I like to put it all into a bowl and then all in at one go. I'm just checking the heat at this stage and I'll start heating the vegetable oil up. It's roughly a tablespoon. And then that's into the warm pot. Now we're not looking at burning or caramelizing the onions at this point. We're just making them a little limp and getting the aromatics out of them. Now it's time to dice up those garlic cloves, but before that, I just want to let everyone know that I have a business podcast. Go check it out on all major platforms. So just dicing up this garlic. If you've seen other videos, and you'll see me working with a little seesaw cutting tool that I use to dice up my garlic. It's from a very well-known Swedish store. It makes it so easy to dice up garlic. And we won't add that just yet. We'll just continue working on the onion just to soften that down a bit before adding the garlic. Now I know this is controversial, but I do like putting mushrooms in basically everything that I cook. I just find that they absorb the taste so well. And hey, it's my recipe, why not? If you don't want the mushrooms, you don't have to put them in, but give them a go. It's actually really quite nice. So nice thin slices. You'll see that I've left the skin on them and left the stalk in. You'll see that you can just tilt it to the side and you can remove the stalk, and then put your finger underneath the cap and you can actually pull the skin off of it. It really doesn't matter. The only reason you would really need to get rid of the skin is if you're going to have it in a salad, and that's really just for aesthetics. And don't forget to mix around the onion every now and then. You don't want it to burn to the bottom, even though you will start to see some discoloring of the bottom of the pot as it continues to cook off the moisture. Just going to prepare the fresh herbs. You don't have to put fresh herbs in. I love adding fresh herbs to my cooking. I think it just adds another level instead of the dried herbs, which are fine, and I do put some in this recipe, but again, personal taste. So I've got some basil and I've got some thyme there. I do speed up the pulling of the leaves off of the thyme because it's quite intricate work and it takes a bit of time. And I've also got some parsley. And you can just chop that as coarsely or as finely as you would like. At this stage, you could do a little bit extra to use as your garnish. Now we can continue chopping up our vegetables. Another controversial topic. I had a disagreement with my younger sister because she thinks adding in vegetables such as carrot and celery turns it into a shepherd's pie. And I was like, well, it's going over pasta. It's not having mashed potato on top. So it's a spaghetti bolognese. So back off. But again, you don't have to put the vegetables in. I find that it's an easy way to up your vegetable intake. And if you do them really thin, like I've done them, half the time they basically disappear into the bolognese anyway. And it's a great way to trick kids into eating vegetables if you have trouble. I don't put any red wine in with my bolognese. However, if you were going to put some red wine in, now is the time, and you can deglaze the bottom of your pot with the onion. Just rearranging my cooking station, ready to rapid fire add everything in bit by bit. So I'm adding a little bit more vegetable oil and then adding in my meat. So we're going to cook this meat for roughly 4 or 5 minutes, and we want to have it 80% of the way cooked. You don't want to have to cook it all the way through, otherwise it'll be a little lifeless and a little dry. You'll see that I was using a little stabbing motion, and that's just breaking up any of the clumps of meat that may have stuck together. I'm just adding in a little bit of salt and a little bit of pepper, and you can just do that to your taste. However, don't go overboard. If you go overboard at this stage and you put in too much, it'll ruin the meal. You can always add more a little later on. You'll see that I've made a little well in the middle of the meat and just adding in the tomato paste. You want to cook this off for under 2 minutes, but a minute would be fine. Just have it coat the meat, and you just want to have a little bit of contact before you bring the temperature down with the diced tomatoes, just to awaken that tomato base. Time to add in the diced tomatoes. Make sure that you're putting in the juice along with that, because you want all of that tasty tomato goodness. Time to add in the denser vegetables, you don't want to add in your mushrooms just yet because they'll end up just disappearing into the meal. And you'll see that I'm also adding 1 cup of boiling water at this stage. A little later, you'll be putting in some reserved pasta water to thin out the sauce a little more. Because once it's on a simmer, while you're preparing the rest of the meal, it'll be cooking off some of that water content, and you don't want it to be too thick. Time to add in your bay leaves, if you're adding in your bay leaves, the fresh herbs and or your dried herbs. And stir to combine. Now we're going to put this off screen for a little bit while we're preparing the rest of the meal. You'll have it covered and it'll be on the lowest simmer that you can. It's certainly starting to look good already. Now I wipe down the edges with a spatula just so that it doesn't get hard on around the rim. Otherwise it's just a nightmare to clean at the end of the night. Now we can start cooking our pasta. Don't forget to reserve a cup of that pasta water. Now, ordinarily you would be creating a bechamel sauce for a lasagna. However, I was having a chat with my younger sister and I had mentioned how amazing it would be if you would drizzle some of that bechamel sauce over the top of spaghetti bolognese. Now, allegedly, my youngest brother and his partner, they've been doing that forever. But, oh well, so I'm a little late to the party. So melt off your butter. Now, with this bechamel sauce, you're going to have to either take the pot off and on the heat, or you'll see me turning on and off my induction cooktop. Once that's bubbling, you can put in just a little bit of the plain flour. You'll see that it reacts quite vigorously, and that's because the temperature is quite warm at this point. You'll see as I add in that little bit at a time, it doesn't react quite as much. Each time you're adding in the plain flour, make sure that you are completely mixing that in and there's no lumps. If you can get through adding all of the plain flour in with no lumps, you are basically home and hosed, because you can always thin out your bechamel sauce after this point. But if you've got the lumps and they solidify, there's no going back. But that's okay. You can just start again. Now that the flour is fully incorporated, you can add in just a little bit of the milk. You'll see just how quickly that thickens up. So you want to have the milk available on hand to continue to thin out the sauce. It's always good to have your milk above room temperature. So I like to put mine in the microwave on a reheat just to take the chill out of it. Otherwise, you're ruining this push-pull with thickening and then loosening the bechamel sauce. We also don't want to have it too thin because we're drizzling this over a bolognese and not layering it into a lasagna. You want to make sure that it does have a thick consistency. Just adding in some nutmeg now. And once that's mixed in, a little bit of pepper and some salt. And put in half of the tasty cheese and half of your parmesan. We don't want to overwhelm the sauce at this point. We want to fully incorporate that cheese before we add in the rest. And make sure you're giving it a little taste just to see where you're at. At this stage, you may already discover you don't want to have any more cheese in there. However, I like it a little more cheesy. And you'll see that I'm adding just a little touch of white pepper to taste. Once you're happy with the consistency, you can take off the heat, place to the side, ready for later when we plate up. Time to check our simmering Bolognese sauce. It's looking really good. At this point, I'm going to add in my cut mushrooms because at this stage, we're still probably a good half an hour, 45 minutes on the simmer. And while we were preparing the bechamel sauce, I had added in 1 cup of the reserved pasta water. And as you can see, just giving this a little taste test just to ensure that we're on point. So we'll keep that on the simmer for another half an hour. It's time to plate up. So in a large bowl, put your pasta and then spoon on some of that wonderfully tasting Bolognese sauce. And some fresh grated parmesan. And now for that secret weapon, the bechamel sauce. Honestly, you won't go back. After you've tasted this, honestly, it's absolutely divine. I'm going to scissor some fresh herbs over the top of it, and then a little more of the parmesan, and a little garnish just to wow the crowd. And I couldn't resist doing a side-on view of a plate up. Oh yes. You can't tell me that doesn't look appetizing to you. Thanks for joining me. I hope you enjoyed cooking along with me. And just remember, if you've watched each and every one of my real-time cooking videos, you can head to any of the major platforms and listen to my podcast. See you soon.